Again, this will be familiar, I'm sure, to quite a few people on this call, but it's the idea that we can habituate our thinking to one or more of these thinking hats, ways of thinking, and perhaps not access the others. If we translate this to a team or group context, I've noticed that when teams are debating an issue, they very often favour the black hat, which is a very cautious, critical thinking approach, and ignore the possibilities which are offered by thinking using the other hats. So, for example, quite often, both teams and individuals, they can start debating with themselves an issue without even having access or being clear about the full facts of the issue. Are they clear about what they know? Are they clear about what they don't know? Are they clear about what they're assuming and what they might not be assuming? So it can be very useful when we're getting into coaching, before we start diving into solution mode, we start to be very clear that the client is clear about everything that's pertinent to the way that they're thinking about something. And then they may be highly cerebral in their approach. They may do a lot of thinking about it, but are they accessing feelings? Are they able to say that how they feel about something has an important bearing on the course of their thinking? So we might direct them to be deeper into their into their feelings. We might invite them to be more creative, to look at some creative solutions. One of the very simple ways we do that is brainstorming, but there are other creative ways in which we can help them to think differently about what they're engaged with. We might usefully keep them focused on benefits or outcomes from what they're thinking about. It can be all too easy, I suppose is the right word, for people to stay in a kind of problem thinking mode and not think about what it is that they're really trying to achieve for themselves. And finally, thinking about how they're thinking, which is really what we're talking about today. If you were to invite the client to say, look, how would you describe your thinking about this? What do you notice about the way you're thinking about this? It takes them into a kind of, I have to call it a meta position mentally, where they're having to observe their own thinking processes rather than just do them. So in a way, it's inviting them to take a step back and critique their own thinking processes. So that's the way I kind of see the six thinking hats operating. And for me, it's almost just a mental reminder to at least in my own mind, be aware of the kind of thinking hat that the client is wearing.
And so you might not go through every hat
No,
every time you use this, but you've got it in your head that what hat is the client wearing at
yeah,
the moment, and how might I invite them to put on a different hat.
just so. And it's a kind of checklist for myself, and
Mhm.
it's a way of thinking. Are there different ways of thinking about the issue, and can I bring those potentially different ways to the client's attention?